The most common UFO sightings are of a disc or saucer-shaped craft. But not all UFOs fit this description. Different sizes and variations of craft have been photographed and filmed around the world.
These craft are often referred to as probes. They seem to appear and hover for hours to several days at a time. They don't have a wide range of movement, but they seem to wobble or spin. And very often people have seen them hanging for hours and hours just observing.
This probe-shaped UFO was videotaped in Las Vegas in 1991. In the early morning hours, an unsuspecting cameraman looked out his window and witnessed this probe hovering over a neighbor's house. It remained for several hours. Again in 1991, another probe was videotaped in the Las Vegas area. This probe hovered over an industrial park for several hours while a crowd gathered to watch the craft. The very next day, the same cameraman was shocked to see the probe had returned. On this day, it was monitoring the power line several hundred yards to the west.
This particular probe was shot in Gulf Breeze, Florida in 1993. I think the most interesting thing about this probe is the distinction and detail that you can see very clearly. But again, you can see the slight rotation of the craft. You can clearly see the silver highs and lows.
The cameraman, who wishes to remain anonymous, was camping overnight with a friend. When they awoke, this probe was observing their campsite. Both eyewitnesses said this probe was completely silent as it hovered over the water. At times, the craft approached the shore, but kept its distance from the campers. Both eyewitnesses said they experienced an eerie feeling, as if they were being watched.
You can clearly see the dynamic change in color and top. There seems to be some grating right there at the top as it slowly spins around. You can see some of the details on the craft as it kind of bobs in the air. This one here is one of the most detailed probe shots I've ever seen.
The probe continued to observe the campsite for about half an hour until it slowly moved out to sea. The United States isn't the only country where probes have been sighted. Like most typical saucer-shaped UFOs, probes have been videotaped and photographed in almost every country around the globe.
This very similar object was shot in Kobe, Japan in 1973. It's not streaking across the sky, it's just kind of hanging up there. This shot was taken in London, outside of London, in '95, near a freeway bridge. You can see the craft very clearly hovering alongside the bridge as it approaches an open parking lot. You see the lights of the parking lot. In this next sequence, you see the craft come to a landing in the parking lot. You can see the two lights of the parking lot. There's the craft. Now, what's very striking is after this craft lands, you can see it coming down here, and it has released a probe that seems to be making its way toward the road. You can see the cars moving in the distance. You can see very slow movement. Now you can see the original craft that came into the picture is now rising above the road and seems to be leaving the scene, leaving the probe behind.
As the probe slowly moved away, it passed over the freeway below. This dramatic footage has become known as the London Landing. Never before in history has a probe been caught on tape being released from a flying saucer. This is truly an extraordinary sighting. In Henderson, Nevada, we see another probe-shaped UFO that was videotaped at dusk. In 1990, we see yet another probe that was videotaped in Las Vegas just after dark. This probe hovered in a residential district for nearly an hour as the cameraman captured this dramatic footage. In what may be one of the lengthiest close encounters ever recorded, a probe hovered over a neighborhood for 3 consecutive days. The local residents described this probe as completely silent, not making a sound as it hovered in the sky. Eyewitness accounts described the probe as having a searchlight that would turn on and off throughout the 3-day sighting. It took 2 days of repeated calls from the local residents to the sheriff's office before a deputy was sent to investigate. To this day, no record of the sighting is on file with the sheriff's office.
Now this is a very striking probe shot. You can see the probe slowly descend down to the water, and it seems to just hover right above the surface. You don't see any movement on the water. The craft is clearly right above. You can see a slight shadow down here. And then the craft slowly kind of rises up and departs the scene.
Since the 1940s, Hollywood has portrayed the typical alien craft as a disc or flying saucer. But not all UFOs look like the classic disc-shaped craft or cylindrical probe. UFOs have been photographed in all shapes, sizes, and colors. However, a large majority of sightings fall into this last category.
UFOs, as we can see, come in many different sizes and shapes. Obviously, the classic round saucer shape is the most known. But we also have what are called cigar-shaped ships. They seem to be long, cylindrical. This shot here is a cigar-shaped craft filmed in Germany, Hagen, Germany, I believe in 1983.
This similar cigar-shaped UFO was also photographed in the skies over Hagen, Germany. The footage was taken in 1980. Even an airliner has had a close encounter with a cigar-shaped UFO. Retired airline pilot Guy Kirkwood describes what happened to the crew and passengers aboard Flight 182.
A scheduled flight from Los Angeles to New Orleans, about 30 miles out of Albuquerque Center and 31,000 feet in a Boeing 720B. We had one right alongside of us for about 8 minutes.
Members of the crew and even a number of passengers were able to take photographs of the object.
It looks like a rifle barrel, and it was larger than the Boeing.
A terrified stewardess asked Captain Kirkwood what to tell the passengers. He simply replied,
Tell them they're looking at the same thing we're looking at. We refer to these things as undesirable flying objects. They're not fun. There's no joy in it. And especially when you're responsible, in this case, for 176 lives.
Cigar-shaped crafts were first sighted in Nuremberg, Germany in 1561. In 1990, crowds gathered in Krasnodar, Russia, to watch this cigar-shaped UFO as it hovered over the city for several hours. Another cigar-shaped UFO was filmed in Rhode Island in 1967.
This shot, taken by George Adamski in 1952, clearly shows the larger ship with many smaller ships hovering about it. It's very unique to note the dark, shadowy effect of the larger ship and the very luminescent, bright color coming off the smaller ships.